Hey, it's Jeremy from jeremy.net. So, creating a graphic novel is a long and challenging road. It's a long process. And I know for a lot of people, one of the biggest difficulties you have is where to start. What do? You've got an idea for a story. What happens next? And I've talked a lot in other videos about outlining. I've got a video where I show how I outline my stories and actually build it out. And I've done tons of videos about my thumbnailing process. But I don't think I've ever shown you where the start of my journey of actually publishing my comic began. So this is my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It's a psychological thriller. It's available on Amazon. You can get it at amazon.jeremy.net, GERIMI.net. But what I don't think I have ever shown on my YouTube channel before is what I published leading up to this. So before I put this book out, this book I published in 2009. Back in 2006, I published this. This is an ash can. For those of you who don't know, an ash can is a common name for an 8.5 by 11, well, it's a 5.5 by 8.5 thin little comic book. It's a thin booklet, staple folded, and it's, half the size, it's a sheet of 8.5 by 11 folded. And basically it's saddle stitched like a comic book. And it's something that a lot of publishers would use to make a mock-up. And it originally started up as a mock-up to sort of preview the book and check it for errors and just have something to look at before you went to printing. And they often went into the ash can after they were printed up, hence the name ash cans. At least that's my belief of where the name came from. I could honestly just be making this shit up off the top of my head. I don't know. But I remember during the 90s, during the era of image comics, when they started coming out, a big thing that a lot of people started collecting were ash cans of early image comics. And then you started seeing them kind of everywhere. There's a period in the late 90s where everyone was buying and selling ash cans. And a lot of times at conventions, when you see people that are selling like photocopied, sketchbooks that they make at conventions, that's usually what they are. It's just, collecting together the pages of artwork and something you can go and get made at a copy shop without paying the large fees of like getting offset printing. So this one I actually produced for Wizard World Los Angeles in 2006. I actually put that on the cover, and I think that was the only. It was good that I put it on there as an exclusive because that's the only convention I ever sold it at. Because at the time, my good buddy Carl Altstetter, who I haven't given a shout out on the channel in a while, but he's an established comic creator, and he told me if I had this idea for this comic book, this graphic novel, and I really wanted to get out there as a comic creator, I should get a table. So he was planning to do the Wizard World Los Angeles anyway. He asked me if I wanted to split a table with him, which was very generous and kind of him. So all I had were just a few 8 by 10 prints, and I got 50 of these printed up, and I think I sold through 45 of them, and I intentionally did not sell the last 5 because I wanted to keep them as sort of a keepsake and a memento of my first comic convention as an exhibitor. I'd been going to comic conventions since I was in high school, and I'd even gone and worked on the when I worked in the toy industry. I had gone for the toy company I worked for and worked their booth, but it was my first time selling my own work, and I was extremely proud of it, and I felt like it was worth me saving a few of these just as a memento. So what this book is, it says on their chapter 1 preview. I had already drawn the first 18 pages of the comic, which were my pretty much, that was my preview. Now, mind you, all I had done was the pencils, and I had done Photoshop gray tones over it. I still hadn't gone around and inked the pages yet. So these are just like my rough pencils, and it's funny because it's really painful to look at this stuff now because it's over a decade old that I drew this. And while I'm still working on improving as an artist, I'm still going to figure drawing classes. Sometimes you look at your early stuff and you're like, wow. But you know what? I made it. I'm still proud that I made it. I'm glad that I made it because if I didn't make this, I wouldn't have this book. So this contains the first chapter. It's the first 18 pages of the story of Eye of the Gods. and it's just the rough sketches. This page, unless I maybe fix some typos, this page is almost exactly what was in the final book, because it's a little text area. It's supposed to be a website that you're looking at for the company that does the medical procedure where they clone your own eyeballs from your own DNA and grow you new ones that are resistant to ultraviolet radiation and the effects of aging. So, and this page looks almost exactly like the page that's in the finished book. So other than that, like, not a whole lot has changed from this. There's even places in there where I wish I had gone back. Like, look at it now, I want to correct all the proportions that are wrong in it. But these are all of my rough pencils with just some Photoshop gray tones. And all it is just a little staple-stitched booklet. Some of these are very different. Like, this one feels a lot more painted, and I went back and inked these pages, and I think I changed them a lot in the final version. The story panel layout is pretty much the same, but the actual drawing I think changed quite a bit. And then, at the end of it, at the end of the chapter 1, it says end chapter 1. I've got thumbnails from chapter 2. And even now, even then I was back into thumbnailing. And what I did was I went and I had thumbnailed the entire graphic novel. And you can see the letters in here. I went through, and these are all very, very rough, crude sketches. But I went through and I had thumbnailed the entire graphic novel beforehand and lettered it so I could read it as a book. I could give it to some friends to check for typos, get some feedback, work out all the details. And then once I knew that I had the story I wanted to, I had added pages, removed pages, moved some sequences around, cut stuff. Once I had that, then I went back to the beginning and I had redrawn the first chapter. And then I just went, page by page, finishing the entire thing. So the reason why I'm showing you this is because once you've got your idea for your story and you've written it and rewritten it, and you've got the story as well written as you feel you can, and you've got your outline pretty tight, your story's structured, you're happy with it, and you do your thumbnails, the next step, after I published this, people didn't see it again until I had the finished graphic novel, because I decided to do this book as a complete graphic novel. My current series, Morningstar, which I've been sharing with you, the work in progress, Morningstar, I conceived of that as a complete graphic novel. But I knew, considering how long it had taken me, it took me 3 years to finish this one, and that was after having the entire thing thumbnailed. So I knew it was going to take a very long time to finish Morningstar, and that's the reason why I decided to do it in individual issues, just so that I wouldn't be... All the people who supported me and purchased this book, I didn't want to just disappear. I wanted to still put work out so they could at least see that I was continuing to try and grow and tell stories. It wasn't just some guy put out a graphic novel and you're never going to hear from him again. So I wanted to make sure they knew I was still making work, as slow as it's been. And even to this day, with Morningstar now, I call them sketchbooks simply because the term ash cans aren't as common anymore. Anyone that's been reading comics for a long time will probably know it. Anybody who's been reading comics since the 90s will probably be familiar with the term. But otherwise, people don't use that term as much anymore. So I started calling them Morningstar sketchbooks. But, with each issue, I've got my rough layouts, and I letter, the layouts for each issue specifically so that I can put out a sketchbook. And I put out a sketchbook so that people can see, this is what the full story is going to be. But it's not the inked version without the gray tones. And I only have them on sale until I finish the final issue. And after that, whatever sketchbooks I have left, I'll sell out, and then I'm not going to print anymore. So when you've got your story worked out and you're like, what do I do? You draw your layouts, and then maybe if you don't want to go out and pay, or you don't have the budget to get a full issue printed, you can go and just get an ash can made and bring that to a convention and sell that and see how it goes. Because honestly, the fact that I was able to sell, wasn't sure if I was going to sell any of these. The fact that I almost sold out gave me a lot of the strength to continue the journey that took many more years before I was done with the graphic novel. Maybe that's what you need, is just put out a small sketchbook. And maybe you aren't going to sell all the sketchbooks you printed out. Don't get like 500 sketchbooks printed up. Get 50 printed, get 10 or 20 printed. If you sell a few, then that people are interested in the story you're doing. And that alone, even if you don't sell out, I think I probably would have finished the graphic novel no matter what, because I'm really stubborn. But even if I'd only sold half of what I had brought with me, that alone would have given me a huge boost, because I was sitting there in a room full of what I considered, well, they were professional creative artists. You know, a room full of artists and writers, a lot of whom I had admired for many years, selling their works. And the fact that I was at a table in the same room with all these people and I was selling my work, and nobody knew who I was. No one had ever seen any of my work before. I'm just this guy who's sitting here with this psychological thriller comic book. And just based on me having a cover that looked interesting and me telling them about it, people thought, yeah, I'll spend some money on this. And that kind of validation is priceless. You know, just knowing that people are interested in the work you're doing can be the fuel that you need to continue that long journey that'll take you from an ash can or a sketchbook of a single issue to a completed graphic novel or a series of graphic novels. So beyond just your idea and doing thumbnails, I thought it would be useful to show you what was the first step I took in actually publishing my work. And it was just getting an ash can printed and taking it to a comic convention, getting at a table and selling my work. So, you know what? If you've got any other friends that are interested in comics also, or friends that are artists or crafters, but anyone who's interested in exhibiting at a comic convention, split a table with them. Make an ash can of your comic. Maybe it isn't even the full story. Maybe it's just a bunch of concept art and some pages of you actually talking about the story, and maybe like, 6 or 8 pages of actual comic story showing the first chapter. But whatever it is, start putting your idea out there, sharing it with people, and see what kind of feedback you get. Not only will it give you the courage to go further, but you may learn something interesting and valuable from readers that will make you say, oh, I hadn't thought about telling this about my story, or telling that about my story, or angling it this way, or changing this character to a different ethnicity or a different gender, or adding other elements that are lacking. Or you might discover there was something in your book that was really offensive that you're like, oh, wow, maybe I should remove that from the story. There's a whole lot of different things that getting feedback from people early on can do. And it doesn't mean you have to take their feedback in. You can always, if you're determined, the story you want to tell, then stick to your guns. But sometimes, I feel a lot of times, it can be more helpful than hurtful to hear what other people have to say. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy these videos, please like and share them. Don't forget to click the subscribe button. You can sign up for my weekly newsletter to get a free digital comic at newsletter.jeremy.net. That's newsletter.gerimi.net. Also, visit my main website, jeremy.net, where you can buy my comic books, art prints, and more. There's also links to my Instagram, Twitter, and other social media accounts. That's it for now. Go be creative.